Steve Jobs' leadership style seems to be more autocratic, I would say. At times he can be a little bit controlling, but he does delegate some of his workload onto about 100 individuals, and I would be included. Steve Jobs also prefers to operate on an initiative structure. His behavior is aimed at defining rules and regulations and organization and ways of getting things done. He's also very production-oriented, which leads to our work environment being very focused on getting stuff done all the time. We're very task-oriented here at Apple. He's also a perfectionist, which is really a good thing for Apple, I guess, because we always have to do everything perfectly.
What type of leadership behavior does Steve Jobs exhibit?
I would say that Steve Jobs is known for his autocratic behavior. He likes to control every aspect of Apple, from the regulations to relationships to our activities at Apple. He also operates as an authority compliance manager, which basically means that he has an intense concern for always getting our product, our task completed, and less concern for his people. But he enjoys tight control and is extremely focused, which is a very good thing here at Apple. He's definitely task-oriented, which means he always wants us to get our work done. He's always extremely cautious about us always having our tasks done instead of perhaps focusing on our relationships and the people at Apple.
Can you give examples?
I would prefer not to go into examples about Steve Jobs.
Would you consider Jobs to be charismatic?
I would definitely consider him to be a charismatic person. He is highly focused and is known to captivate an audience. For example, in the 1980s, Apple employees even coined a term called the reality distortion field, which this term was used to describe Steve Jobs' ability to persuade even skeptics about his ideas, and Apple employees have been using this term ever since.
What do you think it is about Jobs that has made Apple so successful?
I would say that it's two main things: the fact that he's highly entrepreneurial and the fact that he's very creative. He has a strong will to always succeed and takes extraordinary risks within our company. That makes us the strong company we are today. He's also a transformational leader who has brought a lot of positive changes, not only for Apple, but for Pixar as well.
How are the leader-member relations at Apple?
There are not a lot of quality relationships here at Apple between Jobs and his employees. Unfortunately, he can be a little unfriendly and rejecting at times. However, Apple is a very successful company, which shows that you don't need excellent leader-member relations all the time at companies for it to be successful.
According to Douglas McGregor, leaders make one of two assumptions about an individual. Either they're motivated by lower order needs, which is theory X, or individuals are motivated by higher order needs, which is theory Y. Where would you place Steve Jobs?
Well, Steve believes that people work as little as possible, that they lack ambition sometimes, that they prefer to be led, are sometimes resistant to change, and perhaps not very bright. Therefore, I would say that Steve Jobs believes that we are more motivated by lower order needs, which would be theory X.
Hey, didn't you work at Apple?
Yeah, I did.
Could we have a moment of your time to ask you a few questions?
Oh, yeah, sure. Come have a seat with me.
Oh. So, what are some of the things that were assumed in the office?
Some of the things that were assumed was, first off, you don't do things to your highest quality. You do them to what you think Steve's quality would be. And Steve was a perfectionist. So this drove everyone else to be a perfectionist. Another thing that was assumed was we had unwritten rules about privacy and secrecy, and these ranged from what you could put on your Facebook to even what you could tell your wife. It was a very secretive culture. It was almost like a cult. Those are some of the examples of Steve's and the company's espoused values. Then we also had enacted values such as innovation. And these values were a big part of our culture because we were both a strong and adaptive culture of empowerment where Steve's values intensely drove the company. So we were a strong culture, but at the same time we were adaptive. Steve wanted you to be risk takers, innovators, and was obsessed with innovation and change.
Didn't you used to work at Apple? Could I please have a moment of your time to ask you a couple questions?
Oh, sure. Let's
Okay.
talk over coffee.
Awesome, perfect, thank you.
My treat. So what can I tell you about Apple?
Yeah, what are some of the things that people can identify Apple employees by?
First, at Apple we had a number of stop words, or words that we were not allowed to say. For example, we were banned from saying the word unfortunately. Instead, we had to substitute that with as it turns out. So for example, I could not say, unfortunately, the sales for the fourth quarter were down. I would have to say, as it turns out, the sales for the fourth quarter were down. Also, at Apple, we all had one of these, an iPhone, and they were all password protected. In fact, Steve Jobs would sometimes come around, grab an employee's iPhone, and check to make sure that it was password protected.
Can you tell us a little about why it was so important to keep your phone locked?
Yes. One word, secrecy. Any phone that was not locked was a potential leak, and Steve Jobs was very secretive and did not want anything leaking out. In fact, he even had a World War II poster in his office that said, "Loose lips might sink ships." Apple as a company was very secretive, and even getting to my office was like going through a fortress.
We've heard some controversial rumors about Steve. Would you care to share any stories about him?
Stories. Alright, what can I share with you? So, I heard that he once fired a girl who brought him the wrong brand of mineral water. And I also heard from a low-level employee that one time as Steve Jobs was walking around campus, the groups of people who were in his way would split up so he could walk through them, and it was like he was walking through the Red Sea.
Well, that was very enlightening. Thank you for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. Just make sure Steve doesn't see this, okay?
No problem.
From the research the news team has conducted, we now have some insight into Steve Jobs' ethics and values. As far as his personality goes, instrumental values do not seem to be as pronounced as his terminal values. One can even go as far as to label him as a high-Mac individual, as in the means are not as important as long as the ends are achieved. Jobs only hired people who truly respected and thrived for the company's mission. If a prospective's eyes didn't light up when presented with a product, he or she was not getting hired. This showed that they were going to put in the hard work and effort to accomplish company goals, regardless of what it required from them. Jobs strongly believed in his product. When at Pixar, the company was struggling financially while making the movies Toy Story. Yet he still allowed the 4-year production process to continue, regardless of how expensive it became. He highly valued simplicity and innovation, evident in the products that defined Apple. He considered attention to detail very critical to have any success. He rejected multiple expensive iPhone prototypes before being presented with the one he considered worthy of the Apple name. At the same time the iPhone was released, so was the unsuccessful Mobile Me. The team in charge of that project, having proved themselves unqualified in his eyes, was disbanded and reformed, mostly with new members. Jobs had a low tolerance for failure. The way he treated employees, Jobs was served and in turn only served the Apple brand and its products. By association, he also served his customers, but his main priority was the innovation that made Apple what it is today. This is why one can say Jobs did not fulfill the role as a servant leader.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing, and it's totally true. And the reason is because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, if you're not having fun doing it and you don't really love it, you're going to give up. And that's what happens to most people, actually. If you really look at the ones that ended up, being successful, unquote, in the eyes of society, and the ones that didn't, oftentimes it's the ones that are successful loved what they did so they could persevere when it got really tough. And the ones that didn't love it quit because they're sane, right? Who would want to put up with this stuff if you don't love it? So it's a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of worrying constantly. And if you don't love it, you're going to fail. So you got to love it. You got to have passion. And I think that's the high order bit. The second thing is you've got to be a really good talent scout, because no matter how smart you are, you need a team of great people, and you've got to figure out how to size people up fairly quickly, make decisions without knowing people too well, and hire them, and see how you do, and refine your intuition, and be able to help build an organization that can eventually just build itself, because you need great people around you.